Hey everyone, it's Matt C, and I'm going to be doing a brutally honest book review of Doug TenNapel's Bigfoot Bill. So someone once told me there's two ways to get to know someone. This is going to sound profound, but it's not really. You can listen to them talk about themselves, or you can read or listen to them tell stories. And as cheesy as that sounds, I think it really kind of works because Doug's kind of reading Doug's stories allows you to kind of see him from the inside out, kind of see his thought process from the way he thinks about things and how he kind of views the world from his own perspective. When you listen to someone kind of describe themselves, you kind of get it's more like a outside looking in sort of approach. That's kind of how I see it, at least. They're kind of telling you what they want to tell you about themselves, and stories are a little bit more vulnerable. They kind of reveal more about the author than maybe they're aware of. I'm kind of setting it up like I know a lot about Doug, and I don't. But anyway, actually, enjoyed this book. Not going to bury the lead, but I did my last video. I came up with kind of 3 things that I was kind of anticipating that this book would give, and some aspects it paid off, and some it didn't. I'll just get into it. The emotional ending. I was expecting kind of like a big, gigantic payoff. Emotionally, for some reason, I don't know. He seems like an emotional guy. I thought that's where he was gonna plant the majority of that. Turns out he didn't. He put it in the beginning. He put it in his characters, and he put it in the small moments, the little moments between the characters, like here. A lot of these little side characters, he knows how to make a weird, wacky world that is appealing, which ties into the insane story, which actually did pay off. It happened as I expected it. A lot of secondary characters were just as entertaining and enjoyable as Bigfoot Bill himself. Bigfoot Bill, and I guess this is something that happens a lot of times with protagonists. He's more of a blank slate than the other characters, and I guess that allows you to kind of see the story through his eyes more, maybe kind of project yourself onto him. He's a nice guy and he's an idiot, but other than that, it's not and his defining motivation to find his parents, but it's not really honestly, I feel like what were some great, don't want to show too much. Basically, the way he drew him made him the coolest character in the book, in a sense. That's the most appealing thing about him, is just how he draws him, which is great because I don't think he's drawn anything like Bigfoot Bill before, and yet he knew just how to tell a interesting story just through visuals through Bigfoot Bill. This is a great example of him understanding, I guess, like hairy ape anatomy, or just the way that he wanted to do it. He knew how to do it really well. It's not Earthworm Jim anatomy, as far as I understand it. It's not the sort of thing that you see in other books that he's done. So it's cool to see him come out with something that's new and yet feels like already polished, like he knows how to do it. This was kind of a funny thing. And this is me totally reading into Doug without knowing much about him. First time seeing him from the inside out, seeing how he tells stories. The girl, it's cute. The storytelling is cute with the girl, but the anatomy is not as great. And he's much better at drawing male characters than female, which is fine. It kind of adds to the charm that the whole book kind of imbibes, of like this awkward distance that the male characters have with the female, and I don't know. So sometimes I feel like Doug thinks of himself as a brutish animal who doesn't deserve and doesn't understand the feminine sex, and that's fine. It's fun. By the way, I thought that was the Earthworm Jim reference. Turns out he was on another page. What was another thing I was gonna? Is this the Nancy Pelosi page? At first, I kind of thought like, okay, is this the kind of, the silly? If you read it, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, there she is. But then I was like, oh yeah, isn't Nancy Pelosi from California? So it fits. It's fine. It's a cute little political dig. And it's so nonsensical. Like, it's like so much in this story that it doesn't feel. I would imagine any Democrat wouldn't be offended by that. At least I hope they wouldn't. What was the third? Okay. Second. So, emotional ending? No. It was an emotional beginning, which allowed everything else to be emotional. Insane story? Yeah. And it really did work for me. This isn't a Marvel DC book, and I'm really curious about what Marvel DC types are thinking about this now that he's kind of cross-pollinated fan bases with his own work. I mean, it's a larger format that I think anyone from superhero comics would be interested in. The paneling is what I mean, I'm used to larger format and I'm used to larger paneling. I need, this is almost too much. Like 4 or 5 panels is kind of max from what I'm used to, because what got me into comics is this stuff. Some of you guys might know this. Kazu Kabuishi. And I was looking through them, and because I knew Doug had done one of them. I don't think I have the one that he did one in, which is probably why I didn't even know Doug's name until like a year ago or so. But you can see larger paneling, more abstract kind of approaches. It's the indie comic scene. This I mean, forget, this is before Kickstarter days, really. I mean, this is what put indie comics, it invented anthology indie comics, essentially. And it kickstarted the whole, indie comics as a professional, viable community, as far as I'm concerned. Oh, look at that. That's Reagan Lodge. Gosh, his style's changed, hasn't it? I haven't even gone back to this since wow, that's pretty cool. It'd be neat to reread this and compare it to his new work. Anyway, so that's kind of where Doug is coming from, just from but through publishing, through Image, I guess. And what else? Oh yeah, physically expensive book. Yeah, it's expensive, but the value, I think, this is not a Marvel DC book. He doesn't write. I would think most people who come from that background, that superhero background, wouldn't even think that he is telling a comic story. That he doesn't write like a comic author. He writes like one of these guys. He writes like an indie author, which I appreciate, because typically indie authors, they kind of write like they're writing scripts, like film scripts. There's less dialogue. There's more room for panels without dialogue. You don't put more than one sentence in a bubble usually, and you're completely free to tell stories without any bubbles. And that's kind of what he does a lot of times. The dynamism. Gosh, I gotta limit how many pages I'm actually showing of his characters. And less so in the human, but especially in the crazy characters, is just really, it's mesmerizing. It's really exciting. So yeah, I had a lot of fun. Physically expensive book, yes. I immediately forgot about his merch. I forgot about the hard binding. I forgot about this gold leaf and the little embossing. This is where the money's at for me. It's worth every penny and more. Just the way you see here with the Kelsey Shannon coloring. It's really quite incredible. If you missed it, I hope you can find it on eBay or something. It's a really great book, and I'm looking for. I mean, I think mission accomplished as far as he was concerned. I think he's sold me on part 1 enough, definitely enough to make me want to get part 2. And honestly, the way he tells stories, it's sensitive. It's action packed. It's whimsical and dynamic, and yet it allows itself to take time. It's not frivolous per se. That's really enjoyable stuff. That's the sort of thing that a showrunner, I think, comes up with, and maybe someone who's only written in comics his or her whole life would be less likely to be experienced in, I think, at this point. So yeah, basically whatever his next thing is, I don't even think it's going to be Bigfoot Bill 2. I mean, I'll probably back it because he's earned my trust. I like him as a guy. I've heard him tell me who he is. We all have, I guess. Anyone who kind of follows his work on YouTube, his live streaming stuff. We've heard him describe himself, and now you can see who he is from the inside out just by kind of reading one of his stories. That's enough to make me want to buy his next story and the one after that. Sight unseen, honestly. This is really fun. It's an exciting time for comics. This isn't the first time. This is the first time that things got super exciting. This is about 10, 15 years ago. Those died out. They're big, they're expensive, and there was no crowdfunding back then to speak of. This is the new wave. This is the new wave of independent, story-driven indie comics, and yeah, it's just, I mean, who could ask for more, really? So that's my review. It's great. If you missed it, you missed it. Maybe you can find, maybe people are scalping second copies elsewhere, but definitely get whatever his next story is. It sounds like he's already going to be pushing that soon. So anyway, thanks for checking this out, and give me a subscribe and a like, and talk to you guys later. Bye.